the D.C. National Guard. The D.C. National Guard that shouldn't be in D.C. to begin with. 2 of those troops hit by gunfire. Here is a summary of what happened and where we are.
It was a shocking and horrific attack on 2 National Guard members just blocks from the White House, leaving 20-year-old Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom dead.
She's just passed away. She's no longer with us.
And Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf fighting for his life. The suspect in the shooting, 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakhanwal, an Afghan national. The suspect's identity and background sparking renewed criticism over the Biden administration's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. And the United States' effort to help Afghans who had assisted America's military during the 20-year conflict. Sources say Lakhanwal was a highly trained member of an elite Afghan counterterrorism force known as the Zero Units, or National Strike Units.
The men and women of these units were going after the hardest terrorist threats.
Geeta Bakshi was a CIA counterterrorism operations officer who worked side by side with those units in Afghanistan.
Over the course of that 20-year war, they saved countless American lives, often at great personal risk.
She now runs a nonprofit helping those who made it to the United States establish new lives. Bakshi says she was horrified by the attack on the National Guard, as are those she has helped settle.
We work with a part of this community that is responsible, that wants to be here, that believes in American values. I believe that Afghans who came here through Operations Allied Welcome, and since that time, need to be revetted.
Many of those fighters were hailed as heroes and brought to the United States under a Biden-era program.
We had bullets flying over our heads.
Sam Aronson, a former State Department official, heartbroken for the National Guard victims, spent 10 days in Kabul at the height of the chaotic withdrawal, conducting quick checks on Afghans before they were sent to third countries for further vetting.
These people spent anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, in some cases months, at these third country lily pad sites. That's where the extensive vetting took place.
But with President Trump back in office and this horrific attack, Afghan nationals are facing renewed scrutiny.
We are going through the databases to make sure that no known or suspected terrorists enter this country to harm our nation.
Sources tell ABC News that Lakhanwal was formally granted asylum this April under the Trump administration.
We have 8,000 individuals that have been granted asylum since President Trump has been in office.
But he had an expired work permit and could no longer afford rent and food and support his wife and 5 children. While authorities work to determine a potential motive in the wake of Wednesday's shooting, President Trump saying his administration will conduct a full review of all Afghan nationals who entered the U.S. under President Biden.
And Martha joins us now. So, Martha, how surprised are your military and intelligence sources that somebody who worked so closely with the CIA for so long in Afghanistan and moved here with his entire family would do something like this?
I think they are in complete shock and obviously horrified at what happened and the taking of the lives of 2 innocent National Guard members. But they are also concerned that the other Afghans here who are productive, who have jobs, who are doing the best they can, will be targeted by the administration.
It sure looks like that's the plan.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. I mean, that's why I was saying they paused all asylum claims from all Afghanis who are sometimes in the middle of or on the verge of a process that brings them legal residency to the U.S. What's interesting to me about this is it's the typical story from this crew, meaning they find a tragedy, they strip out the facts, and then they weaponize whatever's left to blame Biden. So you have this National Guard shooting in Washington, and you've got Kristi Noem, and I'll play it for you in a moment, going on this show. We just showed you a piece of it. That very same show. She also went on all the shows, Meet the Press, and Face the Nation, etc., and talks about the fact that Biden is the reason that this guy got through. Well, this guy was an elite fighter. He was part of an elite paramilitary force, this Zero Unit, the Afghan Zero Unit. They operated directly under CIA instruction. These are some of the most vetted people there are. So you're going to hear her in a minute talk about, we've got a we're increasing the vetting process on all of these people, and just in general, Biden had this sort of loose to non-existent vetting process. That's just wrong. She talks about biometrics. The biometrics were in place. The intelligence cross-checks were in place. Again, this guy was part of this elite unit. Every database imaginable was used. He was a CIA officers praising him. He was a CIA asset. CIA officers praised this guy, and many like him, who helped American troops in Afghanistan and American military and intelligence operations in Afghanistan. So again, you're talking about somebody who is one of the most vetted people to come into this country, having gone rogue. And now, again, stripped of facts and blamed upon Joe Biden. Let's see Kristi Noem on the ABC This Week program. Go ahead, Tony, please.
Asylum by the Trump administration in April. So did you see any red
Now,
flags?
If you remember, John,
did you see any red flags?
John, all the information that was gathered on that vetting process was gathered under the Biden administration. His asylum claim application started under the Biden administration. That information was provided by them.
This is where she gets caught,
and the responsibility lies with them. And we need to know that and speak the truth of how this entire process happened so that we can fix it. That's what President Trump has been doing and dedicated to, is that when we look at people who deserve asylum, they have to be thoroughly vetted. They weren't under the last administration. That has completely changed under President Trump.
But again, he was granted asylum in April, so President Trump had already been in office for several months. You had been in office. Are you saying there was no vetting done by the Trump administration? You were simply relying on what had been done under the Biden administration? You did no vetting before granting him asylum?
The processes were put in place using information that was gathered during the application process that happened under Joe Biden. And that has been completely fixed. And new metrics and new processes have been added under President Trump. He immediately went to work, and we put in place under USCIS the new data and new information that can be gathered, such as communicating with governments, getting information from them, and making sure that biometric information and dates of service match up. Much of the information that was gathered and provided by the Biden administration wasn't thorough and wasn't done. And what kind of a crazy world is it when you have a president that allows millions of people to come into this country unvetted, not knowing who they are, from countries that perpetuate terrorism upon the United States? And when we saw during Operation Allies Welcome was over close to 100,000 people that were allowed to come to the United States, that Joe Biden said, you know what, we'll vet them after they get here. We'll let them into our country, and then we'll vet them after they get here. And then they didn't do it. They didn't do a good job, and it wasn't complete and thorough, and that's what is being fixed right now.
Again, what the Biden administration said actually is that the vetting was done before they came to the United States. But let me ask you about another subject.
Well, I think if you watch what happened unfold,
but you just said that that's
you
what
watch people pull on.
Biden said. I know, but
you watch people load onto those planes.
They didn't come from those planes directly into the United States. But let me ask you about another question.
During that period of time.
There's a Washington Post report that one of those Venezuelan boats that was attacked by a U.S. missile, alleged drug boats, that a second missile was launched because there had been two survivors clinging to the wreckage.
This is a separate story. Just hit pause. You don't have to. We can double back to this. I want you to hear what she has to say, but I just want to button this out. You saw what happened, right? She blamed Biden. She claimed that the asylum and the vetting process to grant asylum was a Biden problem, even as the Trump administration in April of this year granted this guy asylum. So whatever vetting process there was initially with an Afghan pullout, when there was a chaotic, less than elegant, and you could even say disruptive, wildly disruptive exit from Afghanistan, there's been a lot of time to re-vet and to additionally look over those who are seeking asylum. That asylum that was granted in April was granted and presumably vetted from the new administration. They had been in office. Kristi Noem had been in office, as noted, as had all the Trump officials. You can't double back and then just say, oh, this is Biden's problem, unless you're saying, oh, we just rubber stamped whatever Biden had. Biden was vetting them for initial entry. You granted asylum. So that's one of the classic moves that's in this playbook. Now she's asked to weigh in on the Venezuelan double tap. And just because we played a little bit of it, I'll run it out, Tony, and then I'll get back to the National Guard.
Do you, I know this was obviously carried out by the Defense Department, but is the administration concerned here that that may have violated the laws of war? I mean, was there an imminent threat posed by those people that were clinging to the wreckage of a boat that had already been struck?
Oh, John, that entire story is based on anonymous sources. So we see the press and we see that rag use anonymous sources all the time to print things that aren't true, that are lies, that are completely not based in reality. So I would not put any credibility to that story, to what was said. I have full faith and trust in this president and in this government to do the right thing to keep the American people safe. And I'm so grateful at the amount of work that has been done to stop those deadly drugs from getting into our country.
Yeah.
Just in several
more on that
offloads
in a moment. Okay, thank you. I mean, the hymnal is so well worn. All right, now to Donald Trump talking about these shootings that occurred again late Wednesday and over the weekend. Here's his reaction. He called a reporter stupid for asking a question. Go ahead, Tony.
You can cut that. Hello.
Mr. President, good to see you. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
A question about this tragic shooting in Washington, D.C. U.S. officials say that the suspect worked very closely with the CIA in Afghanistan for years, that he was vetted, and the vetting came up clean.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess.
Okay, thank you. The withdrawal from Afghanistan did have messy aspects to it, as I've noted along the way here, and as we noted at the time. And I would have done things differently. I mean, and, what do I know? Even with the little I know, I would have done a few things differently. That said, let's get back to the issue at hand. And the issue at hand is we strip out the facts and blame Biden. These people came in, there was no vetting. They were vetted, okay? But the vetting that was done to allow them in, and they were vetted before they came into the country. So again, that's the notion and the pictures they show you to and reinforce the notion, all these people on board this plane and they just dump them here in this country, we'll work out the vetting later. That's just not what happened. And more to the specific point with this shooter, he worked closely with the CIA. He was super vetted, ultra vetted. All the biometric data, all the cross-referencing on websites, that was done. And then his asylum was granted by the Trump administration in April. You can't dodge that, but they are. This guy wasn't vetted. The Biden let him in. And then it's then the word salad and the killing the clock, which Kristi Noem does as she goes on these various shows to get that narrative out that it was Biden's fault. So, look, the weaponization of this stuff is sort of where we are now, but this is a tragedy, and it's a tragedy on top of another tragedy that many of these Afghanis who legitimately risked their lives and would be executed were they to return to Afghanistan for being in league with the Americans, they will be affected by this because there is a full stop on the refugee process and on the asylum process with these refugees from Afghanistan. I want to talk more about this with Gary Dietrich. I've got other stuff to talk to Gary about as well. And Secretary Noem. Hey, Secretary Noem, this is from Debbie, and thank you with the $10 super chat. Y'all haven't busted anything. You haven't trusted anything Biden has done or said, but now you're saying you must have trusted Biden's vetting since y'all did nothing further, right? Yeah, it was a weird line she took where she goes, you know, we just trusted the Biden process. She didn't use the word trust, but she said Biden did all the vetting, and then when we approved the asylum in April, the vetting process was that which was done under the Biden administration. Patently false, I think. But a review for asylum, I'm sure, was accompanied by additional vetting. Now, that the vetting process didn't reveal certain things about this guy, clearly that's true. And that the fact that this guy stepped off the curb mentally, in desperation, in anger, with some combination of all those things in his mind, opened fire on these National Guard troops, clearly that's true. So I don't know that any degree of vetting would have been able to reveal this.
If you say that there's anything that America did wrong, it sounds like you're making excuses for someone who opened fire on the National Guard. And that's not my intention at all. Wrong to kill someone, wrong to open fire. But here's this guy who put his life at risk for the United States. He comes here with his wife and his 5 kids, and we took his work permit away so we couldn't feed his kids. Now, I'm not saying I would kill anyone, but I can imagine the frustration and the fear when you're looking at 5 hungry kids and not being able to feed them.
Well,
I mean, obviously there's other ways to deal with it, but I'm just saying maybe we didn't do right by him.
look, his frustration is born of a real thing, and his anger is born of an objective reality that produced the anger. I get that, and I also would suggest, and we can mention this to Gary, who has a good take on sort of the governmental aspects of taking these people in, and typically they're set up with some kind of temporary housing. There are Afghani communities around America that are there with support systems, but you're right. There should be some sort of permit issued that will allow this guy to make a living. Otherwise, you're going to end up with, at best, somebody who's going to be seeking assistance and on food lines. And at worst, somebody who gets so angry and frustrated that they open fire on American troops, which is what happened.
I want to know how many other of these folks that came in from Afghanistan don't have work permits or are being denied things or are not being treated fairly. And are we creating this problem?
Yeah. And CC Ryder is saying this. We don't know what his motive was, so let's not speculate until we get the facts. All right. Yes and no. I mean, I think you're right. Of course, we don't know what the motive was. But I think looking at his circumstance and speculating is safe. Okay. I get it. Nobody can actually be in his head. But I think it's fair to examine the situation with these various Afghani refugees and asylees, and to stipulate to certain situations as Kim just did. So I both understand what you're saying, but I also would suggest it's, I think it's fair to look at the situation. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.